Waitress mocks Keanu Reeves in First Class. Then he does the unthinkable asterisk. It was supposed to be just another routine day at Gate A16 of an upscale international terminal. Passengers bustled about in luxury suits and designer dresses, sipping champagne and scrolling through their phones. But everything stopped the moment he walked in, though, oddly, no one noticed. A tall man in his late 50s, dressed in worn jeans, a loose black hoodie, and a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes, entered the first-class lounge with nothing more than a small canvas backpack. His boots were dusty, his beard scruffy. He didn't look like he belonged. And that's exactly what Tiffany, a young waitress with sharp eyeliner and sharper opinions, thought the second her eyes landed on him. She approached with her tablet tucked tightly under her arm, pasting on a strained smile. "Sir," she began, her voice already tinged with irritation, "this is the first-class lounge. The public waiting area is down that hall to the left." The man looked up, kindness in his eyes, and said softly, "I know. I'm in the right place." Tiffany blinked, caught off guard by his gentle tone. "Do you have a boarding pass?" she asked, trying to sound polite but failing to hide her disbelief. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a folded slip of paper, and handed it to her. She barely glanced at it. "This doesn't look real," she muttered. "Did you print this at home?" Other guests were starting to glance over. A few chuckled. A couple raised their eyebrows. An elderly man sitting nearby, Mr. Baker, frowned at the unfolding scene. He had been quietly reading the newspaper, but now his attention was fully captured. "Miss," he said, calmly, "perhaps you should take a closer look." Tiffany shot him a glare. "Sir, I can handle this." The man with the cap remained calm. "It's okay," he said. "You're just doing your job." Tiffany crossed her arms. "Look, I don't know who you are, but this area is reserved for first-class customers, VIPs, and frequent flyers. You can't just wander in because you like the free snacks." A soft murmur of laughter rippled from a nearby table. The man's shoulders lowered slightly, as if the words had brushed against something long buried in him. He looked around and found a quiet seat in the corner, away from the bar and the buffet. Without saying another word, he walked over and sat down. Tiffany stood still for a moment, as if unsure whether to escalate or let it go. She huffed, then muttered under her breath, "We've got enough weirdos in economy." Mr. Baker folded his paper and leaned toward her. "Young lady, you should learn to speak to people with more respect." She rolled her eyes and walked away, calling out to another employee, "Hey, Mark, can you keep an eye on that guy? He's making some of the guests uncomfortable." Across the room, a little boy about 7 years old dropped his toy car. It rolled across the polished marble floor toward the man in the hoodie. He picked it up gently and smiled as he returned. Here you go, buddy." The boy beamed. "Thanks, Mr. P." His mother approached quickly, grabbing the child's hand. "Say thank you and come with me," she said, eyeing the stranger with a mix of suspicion and discomfort. He gave a small nod and turned back to his seat. Mark, the lounge supervisor, now approached him. "Sir," he said, less aggressive than Tiffany, "do you mind showing me your boarding pass one more time?" The man stood, calm and quiet, and handed it over again. Mark studied it for longer this time, his eyes narrowed. This is real." Tiffany had reappeared behind Mark. "That can't be right." Mark turned to her. "It's a black card. Priority 1 access." She scoffed. "You're kidding." The man spoke softly again. "I'm not here to cause any trouble. I just wanted a quiet place to sit." But Tiffany wasn't done. "Then maybe dress like it." There was a stillness in the air now. The other guests had grown quiet, watching, whispering. Mr. Baker had stood up completely, now visibly agitated. "Young lady," he said again, "you may have just embarrassed yourself more than you realize." Tiffany turned her frustration toward him. "Why are you defending some stranger who doesn't even know how to shave?" Just then, a woman in her 20s tapped her boyfriend on the arm. She stared toward the man in the corner, frowning deeply. "Hey," she whispered. Doesn't he look kind of familiar? The boyfriend squinted. You think? She pulled out her phone, stealthily aiming the camera at him. Meanwhile, the man reached into his backpack and pulled out a small leather book, worn and frayed around the edges. He opened it and flipped through its pages slowly, almost ritualistically. One page had a picture of a smiling older woman, his mother, maybe, or grandmother, alongside a handwritten note. Mark, still holding the boarding pass, looked again at the name on it, and then he blinked, slowly, twice. His hands lowered. His face turned pale. He turned to Tiffany. His voice suddenly reverent. You really need to stop talking now. What? She snapped. Mark glanced at the man, then leaned close to her and whispered something. Her eyes widened. Her lips parted slightly. She looked again, truly looked this time. The baseball cap, the beard, the kindness in his eyes, and that unmistakable, quiet presence. No way, she whispered, across the room. The young woman with the phone was already pulling up a side-by-side photo on Google. She gasped, Oh my God, it's him. The whispers turned to murmurs, and then someone said it aloud. Is that Keanu Reeves? Everyone turned. Keanu looked up slowly, softly closing the book in his hands, and then he smiled. The lounge was no longer filled with easy laughter or quiet conversations. A strange silence had settled, like a storm waiting to break. People stared, unsure whether to stand, apologize, or pretend they hadn't just witnessed a man being humiliated. But Tiffany, she stood frozen, her mouth half open, her pride beginning to tremble. She whispered, That's not possible. Mark leaned in. That's Keanu Reeves. Tiffany, you just mocked Keanu Reeves. She forced a laugh. No way. That guy looks homeless. Mark didn't laugh. He's one of the kindest, most respected people on the planet. You mocked him. Tiffany's face flushed, her mind racing. She glanced at Keanu, who remained seated, quiet, still holding the leather notebook in his hands. He didn't scowl. He didn't raise his voice. He simply turned a page, as if the world around him didn't deserve his anger. Mr. Baker walked over to him with a slow, steady stride. Excuse me, sir, he said softly. I'm terribly sorry for the way you were treated. Keanu looked up, meeting his eyes. You don't need to apologize, he replied. You were kind, that's enough. Tiffany turned away, embarrassed and angry. She grabbed a tray and began clearing nearby glasses too aggressively. A wine glass tipped over and shattered. The noise snapped some guests out of their stunned state. Keanu stood and calmly walked over to the boy he had helped earlier. The boy's mother looked uncertain but didn't pull him away this time. Here, Keanu said, kneeling, I wanted to give you this. He handed the boy a tiny origami crane made from a napkin. My grandmother used to make these when I was your age. Boy smiled and looked up at his mum. Can I keep it? She nodded, her eyes softening. Yes, sweetheart, say thank you. Thank you, mister. You're welcome, Keanu said. Behind the bar, Tiffany watched. Her hands trembled. She had gone from control to collapse in under 5 minutes. And now, her co-workers were whispering about her. Did you see what she said to him? She's gonna get fired. She was so rude. Trying to regain her footing, Tiffany called out, It was a mistake. Okay? He looked ordinary. How was I supposed to know? Mr. Baker turned toward her, disappointment heavy in his gaze. That's exactly the point. Keanu returned to his seat, but it didn't last long. A security guard had entered the lounge. Young, new on the job, unaware of what had happened. I need to see your ID, sir, the guard said firmly. Mark raised a hand. It's okay. I already verified, but the guard waved him off. Sir, step aside, please. Keanu stood slowly. Is there a problem? This area is for VIP clients, the guard repeated. We had reports of someone trying to sneak in. I didn't sneak, Keanu said gently. I walked through the door. Tiffany, trying to shift the blame, stepped forward. I called earlier. I thought he didn't belong here. I didn't recognize him. The security guard now looked unsure. Wait, Is this really who they're saying he is? Keanu smiled faintly. Who do they say I am? The question made everyone stop. Someone in the back whispered, You're Keanu Reeves. Keanu looked at the guard. Do I need to prove that? The guard's cheeks flushed. No, sir, I'm sorry. I didn't mean. Keanu raised a hand, silencing him with grace. It's okay. We all make mistakes. Tiffany bit her lip, arms crossed tightly across her chest. She felt the stares, now judging, accusing, disappointed. Her plan to impress corporate clients with her professionalism had crashed spectacularly. At that moment, Maria, the quiet Latina cleaning lady, entered the lounge. She was carrying a bucket and a mop, completely unaware of the events unfolding. Tiffany saw her and snapped, needing to assert authority again. Maria, you can't come in here right now. We're dealing with something important. Maria paused, confused. I'm just here to clean the spill. Come back later, Tiffany. Keanu looked at Maria, his expression instantly softening. Excuse me, he said to Tiffany. Then to Maria. You dropped your bracelet. She looked down. A small silver bracelet had slipped from her wrist near the entrance. Keanu walked over, picked it up, and gently placed it in her hand. Thank you, Senor Sisai, her eyes wide with surprise. You're welcome, he said, and thank you for what you do. Maria blinked, touched. No one had ever thanked her like that, she whispered. People usually don't even look at me. You deserve to be seen, Keanu said. The entire lounge went silent again. Those words, so simple, landed like a stone in still water. Mark approached Maria. It's okay, clean what you need. You're always welcome here. Tiffany clenched, her fists, her voice rising. Now we're letting janitors stay in first-class lounges. What is going on? Keanu turned. Respect, he said calmly. That's what's going on. Her mouth opened, then closed. She had no reply. Keanu turned back to his seat and looked out the window. A plane taxied down the runway. The world outside was moving, calm, free. Inside, everything was tense, electric, changed. Mr. Baker walked up to Tiffany. I suggest you take a break, he said, and maybe reflect. Tiffany stood frozen for a moment, then set her tray down and quietly exited the room. Maria finished mopping in silence, tears welling in her eyes, not from pain, but from something unfamiliar. Being treated like a human being, Keanu didn't ask for thanks, he didn't expect praise. He just closed his notebook, set it gently beside him, and watched the clouds roll past the tall windows. And then, slowly, one by one, people in the lounge started whispering, not just about the actor, but about the man, as the soft hum of airport announcements filled the lounge. Keanu sat alone by the tall windows, watching a jet lift gracefully into the sky. He held the worn leather notebook in his lap, his fingers tracing its edges as if it were a sacred object. The noise around him faded. His eyes softened, and, slowly, his mind drifted back. He was 8 years old again. A cramped apartment in Toronto, peeling paint on the walls, a tiny stove that barely worked, and the smell of black tea steeping in the kitchen. His grandmother Alina shuffled in with a plate of toast and a smile that warmed the whole room. El amor no se grita mio. She used to say, it's shown. She was the one who raised him when life got too hard for his mother to handle. Alina didn't have much, but what she had, she gave with both hands. Even when her arthritis made it hard to grip the spoon, she cooked for him. She brushed his hair. She listened. And she told him the same thing every night before bed. Be gentle with people. Keanu, you never know what they're carrying. When he was 12, he came home with a black eye. Some kids at school had laughed at his clothes hand-me-downs that didn't fit right. One had pushed him, another called him poor garbage. He had fought back, he'd punched a boy, he'd shouted, he was suspended. When he got home, Alina sat him down. She didn't yell. Instead, she asked, did you feel better after hitting him? No, Keanu muttered, holding an ice pack to his face. She gently kissed his forehead and whispered, "That's because you weren't raised to hurt others. You were raised to understand them." That night, she gave him the notebook, the same one he now held in the airport lounge. "It's empty," he had said, flipping through it. "No," she smiled. "It's full of possibility." She told him to write in it his thoughts, his pain, his hopes, his promises. And he did. He wrote about the day he first saw his dad walk away. He wrote about the nights when Alina cried and thought he didn't hear. He wrote about the way people treated him differently when they thought he was worth less, because of how he looked or how little he had. But he also wrote about kindness, the janitor at school, who gave him a candy bar when he had no lunch, the librarian who let him borrow books without a card, the woman at the corner store who let him take a loaf of bread and whispered, "Pay me back when you can." He promised himself that if he ever became somebody, he wouldn't forget, not the pain, not the kindness, and especially not the people who went unseen. Years passed. Keanu started acting in small theater roles. He didn't do it for fame. He did it because it made him feel like someone else for a while. Someone stronger. Someone who could help. But fame came anyway. Movies, premieres, cameras flashing, people screaming his name. And yet, he still rode the subway. He still gave up his seat. He still donated quietly. He still carried that same notebook, now filled with pages of thoughts and names, many of them written in Elena's shaky cursive. One page had just a sentence: "Stay humble. Even when the world tries to lift you." Alina had passed away before his career exploded. She never saw his face on billboards, never walked a red carpet with him, but he never forgot her voice or her lessons. Back in the lounge, Keanu turned a page and ran his fingers across her last note. "I hope you use your fame to make someone feel seen." He closed the notebook, gently, like closing a chapter of the past. People were still watching him, but from a distance now. Their curiosity had shifted into something deeper, a quiet respect. Maria, the cleaning lady, passed by slowly with her mop bucket. She glanced at him, uncertain, not wanting to intrude. He nodded at her, smiling warmly. "You remind me of someone," he said. She blinked. "Me?" He nodded again. "Someone who gave everything, even when she had nothing." Maria's throat tightened. She didn't know what to say, so she just whispered, "Gracias." "Thank you," Keanu replied. Most people don't realize how much strength there is in quiet work. Meanwhile, in a corner of the lounge, Tiffany sat alone. Her arms were folded, her eyes puffy from crying. The weight of what she'd done sat heavy on her chest. She had spent years trying to climb ladders, impress managers, control every detail of her life. And yet, one moment of judgment had undone all of it. She glanced toward Keanu, unsure whether to approach, afraid she didn't deserve forgiveness. He didn't look at her. He just sipped his tea, watching planes come and go. Mr. Baker sat beside her, placing a cup of water in front of her. "He didn't have to forgive you, you know," the old man said. "But I think he already has." Tiffany looked at him, ashamed. "I don't even know why I said those things." "I do," he replied. "You forgot something important." "What?" "That every person who walks through that door has a story." Tiffany lowered her gaze. Keanu stood up slowly, placing the notebook back in his bag. As he walked toward the center of the lounge, every pair of eyes followed him. Not out of obligation or stardom, but out of awe. He looked around, not seeking attention, just present. He saw the boy he'd helped earlier, still holding the origami crane. He smiled, and then, in a voice gentle but clear, Keanu said to no one in particular, "Kindness doesn't have to be loud, it just has to be real." The words lingered, floating in the air like music that refuses to fade. Maria finished wiping the last corner of the lounge floor. She moved slowly, not out of laziness, but with quiet care, making sure every tile shone. Her job didn't require perfection, but she gave it anyway. Not for praise, not for recognition. Just because it was the right thing to do. She glanced up. Keanu Reeves was still there, seated alone, peaceful as ever. He had changed the atmosphere of the room, just by being who he was, not the movie star, But the man. No spotlight, no security, just humility. Maria hesitated. Her shift was technically over. Her supervisor had already scolded her earlier, thanks to Tiffany's outburst. But something inside her pulled her toward him. She took a deep breath and walked slowly to his table. "Excuse me, Senor," said Saeed softly. Eyes doon. Keanu looked up and smiled. "Hi," she cleared her throat. "I just wanted to say thank you for what you said earlier about being seen." His eyes warmed. "You're welcome." It was the truth. Maria nodded, fidgeting with the edge of her apron. "Most people don't even see me. I clean around their feet, and they act like I'm invisible. But you looked at me, spoke to me like I mattered." Keanu set down his cup and leaned forward. "You do matter. The world can't function without people like you." Tears welled in her eyes before she could stop them. She quickly wiped them away, embarrassed. "Lo siento, I'm sorry. I don't mean to cry." He reached into his backpack, pulled something small, out a polished wooden coin. He handed it to her. "What is this?" she asked, holding it gently. "My grandmother gave it to me when I was about your son's age," he said. "She said, when someone treats you with kindness, you pass it forward." Maria shook her head. "I can't take something so special," Keanu smiled. "It's just a symbol now. The kindness already happened, you gave it." She clutched the coin, speechless. In that moment, Tiffany re-entered the lounge. She paused, watching from a distance. Something about the scene, the way Maria stood, eyes full of gratitude, and the way Keanu looked at her with complete sincerity tugged at something buried deep inside her. She remembered being 15. Watching her mother scrub the floors of a nursing home after hours, too tired to speak when she got home. Tiffany had promised herself she'd never end up like that, working hard and getting ignored. But maybe she had misunderstood what strength really was. She took a step forward. Keanu turned his head slightly, acknowledging her without speaking. Tiffany swallowed hard. "Mr. Reeves, may I say something?" He didn't answer immediately. His silence held weight. She continued nervously. "I was wrong about everything. The way I judged you, the way I treated Maria." She hesitated. "I thought if I acted confident, maybe people would respect me more. But I see now, respect doesn't come from pretending to be above others." Keanu nodded slowly. "That's true. I'm sorry," she whispered. Maria stepped forward. "We all make mistakes." Tiffany looked at her, surprised. "You're not angry?" Maria offered a soft smile. "I was, but anger doesn't clean the floor." Keanu chuckled quietly. "Your words are wiser than most books I've read." Mark, the lounge supervisor, had been watching from the side. He cleared his throat, stepping in. "Maria," he said, "I heard what happened earlier. Tiffany already told me everything. What she said to you was wrong." Maria lowered her gaze. "I want to offer you something," he continued. "We've got a new position, opening soon, assistant coordinator. It's part-time at first, but better hours, more pay, and it's yours if you want it." Maria blinked. "You're offering me that?" Mark nodded. "You've worked here 10 years without ever asking for more. You've earned it." Keanu looked at her with pride in his eyes. Maria nodded, trying not to cry again. "I'll take it. Thank you." Tiffany stepped back quietly, her eyes shimmering. She didn't know if she had a place in this moment, but she was grateful just to witness it. The boy with the origami crane returned with his mother. "Mummy said I could give this back," he said, holding it out to Keanu. Keanu knelt. "You can keep it, but I'll trade you something else." He reached into his bag and pulled out a pen. On the back of the napkin he had used to make the crane, he wrote a short message. "Never forget, being kind is always cool." He handed it to the boy. The mother mouthed, "Thank you," her eyes wet. "Pay it forward," Keanu said. Softly, a hush fell again as Keanu stood. His phone buzzed a flight alert. His plane was boarding. He turned to Mark. "Thank you for your professionalism." Mark nodded. "Thank you for your patience." He looked at Maria. "Keep shining." She smiled. tears finally escaping. I will. He turned to Tiffany last. She waited. You made a mistake, he said gently. But you owned it. That matters. She nodded. I'll do better. He gave her a small nod, then picked up his bag and walked slowly toward the exit. As he passed through the glass doors, the lounge remained still. Then, for the first time all day, someone clapped. It started with the little boy, then his mother, then Maria. Soon, nearly everyone in the lounge was applauding, not because he was famous, but because he reminded them of something important, something human. Mr. Baker, still sitting by the window, wiped his glasses and said softly to himself, he didn't just walk through this place, he changed it. And outside, beyond the glass, Keanu disappeared into the crowd, just a man with a backpack and a heart full of quiet power. Asterisk. The soft beep of the boarding announcement echoed through the first-class lounge. Flight 217 to Tokyo now boarding at Gate A19. First class and priority passengers may proceed. Keanu Reeves stood quietly near the door, adjusting the strap of his worn backpack. Most eyes were still on him. Not with the excitement of fans, but with something quieter: shame, respect. Maria held the small wooden coin tightly in her hand, her knuckles pale from the grip. Tiffany, just a few feet away, still looked down, lost in thought, her guilt sitting heavier than ever. And then someone near the lounge entrance spoke. Wait a minute. A young man in his 20s, with shaggy hair and a skateboard under his arm, turned to his friend. Dude, that's Keanu Reeves. His voice wasn't loud, but it sliced through the silence like lightning. Gasps followed. Whispers started, phones came out. A woman in a pantsuit dropped her latte. Oh my God, someone muttered. It's really him. A ripple of realization spread through the room like a wave. The same man who had been mocked, questioned, and doubted just minutes ago, was one of the most famous, most respected men alive. Keanu's face didn't change. No smugness, no triumph, only calm. He simply gave a small smile and nodded. Mark, the lounge supervisor, stepped forward. Quickly, ladies and gentlemen, he said, trying to keep order. Please give Mr. Reeves space to board peacefully. But Keanu raised a hand gently. It's okay, he said. They just needed a moment to see me. Really see me. Tiffany's chest tightened. She looked at him, now fully lit by truth and shame burned in her. I treated you like trash, she blurted, voice shaking. I acted like you didn't belong here. And you're Keanu Reeves. He turned toward her. The room stilled again. I would have forgiven you, he said softly, even if I wasn't. She blinked, confused. Why? Because people shouldn't have to be someone important to be treated with kindness. The room went dead silent. Maria's eyes welled again. And even Mark lowered his head slightly, absorbing those words. Keanu looked at the boy holding the origami crane. Did you know who I was when I gave you that? The boy shook his head. No, sir. Did it still mean something to you? The boy nodded. Yeah, you were nice. Keanu smiled. Then that's all that matters. Phones began recording. Now not because he was a celebrity, but because they felt they were witnessing something true, something rare. A woman in her 40s approached nervously, holding her phone to her chest. Mr. Reeves, may I ask you something? He turned to her gently. Of course. Why didn't you say who you were earlier? Why let yourself be treated like that? He paused for a moment. I didn't come here to be recognized, he said. I came to rest before a long flight. Sometimes, you learn more by being unseen. She nodded slowly, holding back tears. A man in a luxury suit stepped forward, same one who had chuckled earlier when Tiffany mocked Keanu. He shifted uncomfortably. Sir, I made assumptions too. I laughed. I'm sorry. Keanu didn't flinch. I've laughed at people too, he replied. We all fall short. The question is, what do we do next? The man bowed his head. I'll remember that. Then, in a surprising moment of humility, Tiffany stepped forward. She stood in front of Keanu, hands shaking, voice barely a whisper. I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I want to become someone who does. I've worked in places like this for years, trying to climb higher by pushing people down. And today, I finally saw what real greatness looks like. Keanu didn't say a word. He just opened his backpack once more and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. He handed it to her. She looked at it, confused. "What is this?" "An application," he said. "There's a non-profit I support that trains young women in leadership, empathy, and community action. I think they'd love to meet someone brave enough to admit their flaws out loud." Tiffany's lip quivered. She nodded slowly. "I want to change." "I believe you," Keanu replied. Someone behind them began clapping, softly, sincerely. Others joined, not because they were starstruck, but because they had just witnessed something powerful: redemption, humility, and truth, without revenge. Keanu raised his hand again to calm the room. "I'm not better than anyone here," he said gently. "I've been broken. I've made mistakes. I've judged people too quickly. The only difference is every time someone was kind to me, I remembered." He looked around one last time. "So if you remember anything today, let it be this: kindness doesn't need a reason, it needs a choice." Silence. No one could speak. Some cried quietly, some lowered their heads, others stood frozen, deeply moved. Keanu turned toward the boarding gate. A staff member held it open, tears in her eyes. He nodded at her with a soft thank you and stepped through the doors. But just before disappearing from view, he looked back, one last time, and said, "See people, not clothes, not names, people. That's where the truth is." And with that, he was gone. But the echo of his words, his presence, his choices remained in every corner of that lounge, etched into the hearts of those who had judged too fast, spoken too harshly, or forgotten what compassion looked like. And in that stillness, Tiffany looked at Maria and whispered, "He changed everything, didn't he?" Maria smiled. "No, Kadid. He reminded us who we were all along." By the time Keanu Reeves boarded his flight, the first-class lounge had transformed, not in decor or lighting, but in spirit. The mood was no longer stiff or competitive. It was reflective, humble, human. But the real change started moments after the automatic doors closed behind him. Mark, the lounge supervisor, stood in silence before walking to the check-in counter. He picked up the hotel phone to call his regional manager. His voice was calm but certain. "I need to talk about someone on our team," he said. "Her name is Maria." Meanwhile, Tiffany sat on a lounge chair, the folded non-profit application still in her hands. She stared at it like it was a map out of the darkness. Not a free pass, but a chance. A quiet tear rolled down her cheek, but it wasn't silence for long. A short video clip began circulating online. It was just under a minute. Keanu standing in the lounge saying, "Kindness doesn't need a reason, it needs a choice." No background music, no edits, just the raw truth of the moment. A young woman named Brooke had recorded it discreetly and posted it with a caption. "Keanu Reeves just gave the most beautiful speech I've ever heard in a first-class lounge after being treated like he was nothing. This man is pure grace. We don't deserve him." Within an hour, the post hit 500,000 views. By the time his plane took off, hashtags like #KeanuKindness, #GraceInSilence, and #WeSeeYouNow were trending. News outlets picked it up next. Headlines poured in. Keanu Reeves teaches a masterclass in humility at airport lounge. Anonymous kindness caught on camera until the world realized it was Keanu. Not a performance, just the man he's always been. The video spread like wildfire. Clips of him giving the wooden coin to Maria, of him kneeling to talk to a child, of his gentle rebuke. People shouldn't have to be someone important to be treated with kindness. Maria had no idea what was happening online until her teenage son came running into their apartment later that night. "Mama, you're on the internet. Millions of people saw you with Mr. Reeves." She blinked. "What are you talking about?" He showed her the video. Her hands covered her mouth. No, I didn't know anyone was filming." "You're a hero," he grinned. "They're calling you the heart of the lounge." Maria wasn't used to attention. She cleaned buildings. She wasn't supposed to be seen. And yet, thousands of strangers were now writing messages like, "Maria is everything right in the world. Give this woman a raise and a hug. We need more Marias and fewer Tiffany's." But even Tiffany wasn't being left out of the conversation. A second video had surfaced. Someone had filmed her apology to Keanu, her voice shaking, her words honest, and in an unexpected twist, people were relating to her too. That took courage. She owned her mistake. That's rare these days. Maybe we all have a little Tiffany in us, and maybe we can learn to. By morning, Tiffany received a message in her inbox. It was from a woman named Sandra, a director at the non-profit Keanu had mentioned. The message was simple. "Keanu told us to expect you. When you're ready, we're here." She stared at the screen for a long time before replying, "I'm ready." Across the city, Mark met with the general manager of the lounge. "I want Maria promoted," he said firmly. "She's not just reliable, she's the soul of this place." They agreed. That same day, Maria was offered a full-time coordinator position with better pay, benefits, and flexible hours. She accepted with trembling hands. Later that evening, a delivery arrived at her apartment. A bouquet of white lilies. A note attached read, "You saw me when others didn't. I'll never forget it." Maria sat on the couch, clutching the note to her chest. "Gracias," she whispered. "Wherever you are," and Keanu, he landed. In Tokyo, to a sea of reporters and fans. They had all seen the viral videos. Cameras flashed. Microphones were pushed forward. Journalists asked questions. But he said only one thing before getting into the car. "I'm not the story, she is." Then, he pointed to his heart. "They are." Back in the lounge, something else had changed, something harder to measure. The staff smiled more. They greeted janitors by name. Mark started a weekly gratitude moment before each shift, where employees shared one act of kindness they witnessed, and, every so often, someone new would walk in with a look of stress or arrogance or exhaustion. But instead of judgment, they were offered something different. Patience, compassion, a second chance to be seen. One morning, weeks later, Tiffany walked into the lounge wearing a simple blazer and holding a folder. She was no longer working the floor. She was now an ambassador for the non-profit that helped young women find their voice after failure. She greeted Maria first. "Hi," she said, eyes sincere. "Hola," Maria replied with a warm smile. "You look different." "I feel different," Tiffany admitted. "Good," Maria said, nodding. "You look like someone who sees now." As they chatted, Mark walked by and pointed to the entrance. A new employee had just started that week. Young, shy, nervous. Mark whispered, "Go give her the welcome I never gave you." Tiffany smiled. "I will." And as the door opened, sunlight poured into the room. The same room where one man, in silence and grace, changed the course of so many lives, not by demanding attention, but by giving dignity. The world hadn't just reacted to Keanu Reeves. It had reflected, and for the first time in a long while, it wanted to be better. A week after the viral video exploded across the internet, Maria returned home from her new position as coordinator. Her steps were slower, not from exhaustion, but disbelief. Life had shifted in ways she never imagined. Her son greeted her at the door, holding a manila envelope. "It came today," he said, eyes wide. Maria wiped her hands on her skirt and took the envelope. There was no return address, just her name handwritten in black ink, with care. She opened it slowly, heart pounding. Inside was a simple letter and a certified document. Her eyes scanned the page, and she gasped. It was a scholarship, full tuition, plus living stipend, for her son to attend the school he had only dreamed of, an arts program in New York that specialized in design and storytelling. Maria's fingers trembled. Her eyes darted to the letter. "Maria, when someone helps you without knowing your full story, they're not helping your past. They're investing in your future. You believed in dignity when others didn't. This is for your son, and for the person who taught him to believe in people. Keep shining." Maria pressed the letter to her chest, and wept not out of pity or weakness, but because someone had honored her soul. Across town, Tiffany walked into her first community workshop. She stood before a group of 20 young women, some shy, some tough, all curious. "I used to think strength came from being above people," she said honestly. "But it actually comes from standing beside them." She told them the story not with shame, but with purpose. How a moment of arrogance turned into her turning point. How a man she once mocked gave her a second chance she never expected. By the end, several girls were crying. One raised her hand. "Do you think people like us can really change?" Tiffany nodded. "I don't just think it. I'm proof." That evening, as she locked up the center, she found a small envelope taped to the door. Inside, a card read, "Every time you speak from the heart, the world gets quieter. Thank you for not running from the mirror." Her breath caught in her throat. Meanwhile, the ripple continued across the globe. Donations poured into the non-profit. People shared stories of anonymous kindness. Airports posted signs that read, "Kindness is priority." And yet, Keanu stayed silent. No interviews, no statements. He wasn't chasing credit, he was chasing change. He returned to his quiet routine, walks, motorcycles, helping people when no one was looking. But one day, he made a call. "Is this Mark, the lounge manager?" Mark straightened up in his office. "Yes, Mr. Reeves, I didn't expect please. Just Keanu. I was calling about Maria and Tiffany." Mark nodded, even though he knew Keanu couldn't see him. "They've been doing amazing. Maria's thriving. Tiffany's already mentoring new hires." "I'm glad," Keanu said. "I'd like to offer them something." Quietly, the next morning, Mark gathered the two women near the staff kitchen. They stood there, confused, until he pulled out two envelopes, one white, one cream dot. He handed Maria the white one first. Inside was a set of airline tickets round trip to anywhere in the world, valid for a year. "Is this real?" she whispered. Mark nodded. "He wanted you to see something beyond the walls you've cleaned," he said. "Let her breathe." Maria covered her mouth, tears flowing. He turned to Tiffany, giving her the cream envelope. She opened it slowly and gasped. A full scholarship to complete her college degree online, plus access to therapy sessions and a leadership coach. "He said you were ready," Mark said softly. Tiffany cried, without trying to hide it. "He said one more thing," Mark added. He said, "Tell them this isn't a reward, it's a reflection." That night, Maria sat at her kitchen table, her son beside her. They mapped out dream destinations on a paper map. Paris, Kyoto, Cusco. He turned to her, excitement dancing in his eyes. "Do you think he'll ever know how much this means?" Maria smiled. "I think he already does." Meanwhile, Tiffany typed out a thank you letter, not to be sent, but to be kept. "A reminder," she wrote. "You saw something in me I was afraid to look at. Not just potential, but pain I never admitted. And instead of punishing me for it, you lit a way out. Thank you, I won't waste this." Tiffany across the world. Messages continued pouring. A janitor in Brazil was gifted a vacation by strangers after someone shared his kindness story online. Cafe in Canada replaced all VIP seating with kindness corners. One man in Singapore started a See People movement, writing anonymous notes to strangers each week. It was a wave, and Keanu had simply been the pebble. But even a small stone, dropped with love, could change the shape of the water. And somewhere, on a quiet street, Keanu sat alone on a park bench. A child passed by and smiled. He smiled back. The child walked away, not knowing who he was but feeling, deeply, that he mattered. That was the gift, not the scholarships. Not the programs, but the shift. The unseen made visible. The judged embraced, the broken trusted. All because one man refused to let status speak louder than character. And one woman, one waitress once mocked, had chosen compassion over bitterness. In the silence of that lounge, kindness had spoken louder than fame. And now, it was echoing across the world. The airport lounge was quieter now. It had been weeks. But something about that space felt forever changed. Where once rushed travelers barely made eye contact, now there was a calm awareness. Smiles were more frequent. Conversations a little softer. Every now and then, someone would pause near the corner table where Keanu had once sat alone and reflect. No plaque. No spotlight. Just memory. Maria walked through the lounge in her new uniform. Not as a cleaner, but now supervisor of guest experience. Her badge gleamed. Her presence was gentle but respected. Everyone called her Miss Maria Nowith. Kindness, not pity. In her hand was a small notebook, one she carried daily. Inside, she'd written quotes she overheard, ones that moved her. She opened it now and read one softly to herself. Kindness doesn't ask who you are. It asks who you see. She smiled. Across the city, Tiffany stood in front of a class of young hospitality students. Her posture was tall, her voice steady. No one told me I had value when I messed up, she said honestly. But someone gave me a second chance anyway. And now it's my mission to give that chance to others. She looked down at the bracelet on her wrist, a simple black string with a wooden bead. Maria had given it to her, saying, to remind you that forgiveness isn't a gift, it's a seed. Tiffany wore it every day. Back in the lounge, a new employee walked in, a boy no older than 19. Nervous, holding his apron too tightly. He'd been late on his first day, and a customer had already snapped at him. Maria noticed him right away. She approached with calm. First days can be tough, she said. He looked up, surprised. I thought you'd be mad. I've been in your shoes, she smiled. We don't get better by being perfect, we get better by being seen. He nodded slowly. Maria reached into her pocket and handed him a small folded paper. It was a crane, carefully made, edges clean. Someone gave me one once, she said. It reminded me that even small things can fly. His eyes lit up. Thank you. She touched his shoulder gently. You'll do fine. Meanwhile, somewhere far away, on a quiet trail outside a city park, Keanu Reeves walked alone. No cameras, no fans, just nature. A little girl rode past him on a pink bicycle, then hit a bump and fell. Keanu jogged over immediately. You okay? He asked, kneeling beside her. She nodded, fighting tears. Just scraped my knee. He smiled softly. Let's clean it up, yeah. From his backpack, he pulled out a small first aid kit. As he wiped her knee and added a bandage, the girl looked at him curiously. Are you somebody famous? Keanu paused, then chuckled. Some days, but not today. She giggled. You're just nice. He nodded. That's enough, right? She smiled. Yeah, a woman. Her mother ran over, thanking him, over and over. Keanu simply smiled, waved, and continued on his walk. Back in the lounge, a framed letter had been quietly placed on the staff wall. Signed anonymously, typed. But everyone knew who had written it. To the ones who are overlooked, to the ones who work silently, who get ignored, who are told they're replaceable, you matter, you shape experiences, you soften hard moments, you carry more weight than anyone sees. I saw you. Never stop being that light. Maria read that letter every morning before her shift. One rainy afternoon, an older man in a wheelchair entered the lounge. He looked lost. Most guests were buried in their phones, but Maria noticed him. She approached. May I help you? Find your gate. His eyes softened. You remind me of someone. She smiled. Someone kind, I hope. He nodded. Someone unforgettable. She wheeled him to his terminal, holding a small umbrella over them both. As she did, he looked up and said, Why are you so kind? She thought for a moment. Because someone once showed me what it feels like, she replied. And I don't want anyone to miss that feeling again. Later that night, Maria received a letter in the mail. No return address, again just the symbol of a tiny crane stamped in wax. Inside. A single sentence. You became the teacher, Maria, and the world is learning. Her hands trembled, heart full. Across oceans, in yet another corner of the world, A quiet barista noticed a homeless man sleeping near the cafe window. She made him a sandwich and left it gently by his side, with a note, "You matter." She had no idea why she wrote it, just a feeling, as if kindness had been passed down, whisper to whisper, heart to heart. It was never about who Keanu Reeves was, it was about what he chose to be, when no one was watching. His greatest role wasn't on screen. It was in silence, in humility, in the quiet choice to love people as they are, not as they seem. And now, those choices were multiplying. As Maria closed up the lounge one evening, she dimmed the lights, placed the last origami crane in her notebook, and looked out the wide airport windows. A child nearby tugged her mother's coat and whispered, "Is that the lady from the video?" The mother smiled. "Yes, sweetheart." The child walked over quietly, holding a tiny flower in her hand. "For you," she said. Maria crouched, receiving it gently. "What's this for?" The girl shrugged. "You're nice." Maria smiled, through misty eyes. "That's more than enough." The girl ran off. Maria remained there for a moment, watching planes take off, one after another. A voice echoed in her heart words once spoken in that very lounge. Kindness doesn't need a name, it just needs a heart. Maria closed her eyes and whispered back, "Yes, it does."